Siamai a croeso nôl i sesiwn 3 Carol am Cymru, Cymraeg ail iaith Ionar 2025. Bydd y sesiwn yma yn canolbwyntio ar y treiglad trwynol. So welcome back and welcome to this session, which is going to be focusing on the nasal mutation. It's obviously relevant to the Welsh second language GCSE course, but it's also relevant if you're in another year group and you're watching this to practice your mutations. So, amcanion y sesiwn, adolygu'r treiglad trwynol, so looking at the nasal mutation, what changes and when do we use it? Defnyddio'r treiglad trwynol ar ôl fy, so the word fy, meaning my, causes a nasal mutation. So we're going to practice using it after fy, and then using the nasal mutation after un, meaning in if it's a place. Okay, so those are the aims of the session. So this video will be a 20-minute session and you'll be able to stop and attempt the tasks and then rewatch as many times as you want. Felly, I ddechrau te, cywir neu anghywir? True or false, or are they correct or incorrect? So, for us to understand when we use the mutations, now there are more than one mutation. There's 3 mutations that we use in Gymraeg. We need to understand when we use them and when not to use them. Okay, and which mutation we actually need. So, can we see if these statements are true or false? So, it says, we use the nasal mutation with adjectives. You will use the nasal mutation in every sentence. The letter P changes in both the soft and nasal mutation. The nasal mutation is the opposite of the soft mutation. In a nasal mutation, and a treiglad trwynol, C turns to NGH. And you need to look at the word before to see what type of mutation it causes. So, are these statements that are on the screen now cywir, correct, or anghywir, incorrect? So what I want you to do now, please, is I'd like you to pause this video and jot down the word cywir neu anghywir, and then when you've done that and you've given yourself a bit of thinking time, you can press play again and you can see what the answers are. Okay, so 2 funud, 2 minutes, pause the video, and when you're ready to hear the answers, then you can press play again. Ianta, felly, we use the nasal mutation with adjectives. Now, this is obviously dependent on the word that comes before, okay, but very often it will be the soft mutation that we use with adjectives. For example, yn fendigedig, yn wych, yn ddiflas would be the soft mutation you use with that. But never say never with nasal mutation and adjective. It does depend on the word that's before it. You will use the nasal mutation in every sentence. Once again, all mutations happen due to the word that's before it. There is a really, really low chance that you're going to use a nasal mutation in every single sentence you write, but there may be nasal mutations throughout your work. So what I would suggest to you is when you've written a written answer, that you go back through and you work through the mutation. So do the soft mutation maybe first, then the nasal mutation, and then you can check your work for that. You will use mutations regularly, okay? They will be apparent in your work regularly, so it is important to check for them to ensure our grammatical accuracy. The letter P changes in both the soft and nasal mutation. Now that is cywir, true. Okay, so in a soft mutation, we've got 9 letters that change, and there's another video that you can actually click on to practice that. In the nasal mutation, mae 6 llythyren. There are 6 letters that change, but a P is a letter that changes in both the soft and the nasal and actually the aspirate mutation. So P is a letter that is always going to change should a mutation be required. Okay, what a P changes to may vary, but a P is a letter that changes in all of the mutations. The nasal mutation is the opposite of the soft mutation. Not necessarily true at all. The mutations are separate. The letters that change are different. And sometimes there are similarities, but you just need to know what you need to know is what you need to be revising is what letters change in these mutations and when do I need to use them. Okay, and it's all about practice with these mutations, looking back over your work, reflecting on your answers. And it doesn't matter if you haven't done it, these mutations as you're writing, but the important part is that you can go back through your work and check in case you need to change something. Next one, C changes to NGH. That is cywir. In a nasal mutation, a C does change to NGH. You may be familiar with this, for example, with the word yng Nghaerdydd, okay, or yng Nghymru in Wales is where a C, Cymru, turns to yng Nghymru with the nasal mutation. And the last one, you need to look at the word previously to decide what type of mutation it causes. 100%, okay, cywir. Definitely. A mutation is caused by the word before. Mutation doesn't just happen at the start of a sentence, okay? It will always be caused by something, unless it's a negative phrase, and then it does happen at the start. But the mutation is always, there's always a reason for a mutation. So just be mindful that certain words trigger a mutation to happen. Okay, let's get started then. So, a treiglad trwynol. Now, trwyn we know is nose, hence the fact that nasal mutation comes from there. Okay, now I just told you my chwe llythyren, 6 letters that change in a nasal mutation. Okay, so the nasal mutation affects the 6 letters in the grid. So, yn y porffor, in the purple, I have the 6 letters that change. That means the original words that start with p, t, k, b, d, g are the words that are going to change. And then yn y melyn, in the yellow, is what they're going to change to. So if your word starts with a P and you require a nasal mutation, it's going to change to an MH. If your word starts with a T, an NH, etc. You can see the letters there. Now, I've already discussed this earlier on, but there are 9 letters that change in soft mutation, okay? And these 6 are also affected in the soft mutation, but it's only 6 this time, and then 3 in the aspirate mutation. So PTC, PTK, and BDG, BDG, are always affected in the soft and the nasal mutations. Okay, there are different times when you may need to use a treiglad trwynol. It is not a one word and one word only affects this. Okay, there are different instances where this may need to happen. Now, you can pause this video at any time, just remember, and you can make notes. You can rewind, you can use it after you've written a piece of writing, maybe. You can look at this to make sure that you've done your mutations correctly. So, first thing we're going to focus on then is y treiglad trwynol ar ôl fy. So, the nasal mutation that is caused by the word fy. Now, fy means my, okay, and fy causes a nasal mutation. So, that means the word after fy may need a letter change. It only affects certain letters. We have already discussed that. So if you wanted to say, for example, my family, well, my in Welsh is fy, family in Welsh is teulu. So then, because it begins with a T and the T is in our grid, we would need to mutate the teulu. Just the first letter, remember, it only affects the first letter of the word after fy. However, if you wanted to say fy and then the word after fy, so the word after my, began with an A or an S, for example, then you wouldn't change it. It would stay the same. It only affects those 6 letters, and the only letter of the word after fy is the first letter. So you can see on the grid on the right-hand side there, some examples. So for example, we've got fy, which is my, as we know, plus bag, fy mag. Fy plus teulu, fy nheulu. As you can see there, I've kind of put in bold the words that we need to, the letters that we need to change. Fy plus pen, fy mhen. Fy plus tad, fy nhad. Fy plus ki, fy nghi. Now, if you're stuck, you look back at the other grid on the left-hand side, and you can see where have I got fy mhen from? Well, if you look at the grid, a P changes to an MH, so I literally just swap the P for an MH and copy the rest of the word as it is. The llygaid would stay the same because double L isn't in the grid. Okay, so I put that in there on purpose for you to realise it's only certain words affected. So that is an example of how we would say my family, my father, my dog, for example. Okay, so fy meaning my causes a treiglad trwynol. Okay, so let's practice then. Okay, my task ar y screen. There's a task on the screen. Beth ydy'r treiglad? So we've got 3 columns ar y screen. Saesneg, the English. So my garden, my jumper, my hamster, my chair, my cats, my school, and my nose. Okay, now what I've done in the middle column is I've put it exactly like it was on that example slide. Fy, meaning my, and then we want to say the word that follows. So my plus garden, my plus jumper, my plus hamster. And what I want you to do in the final column, so when I've finished explaining now, you can stop the video and you can practice this, and then press play when you're ready to listen to it and find out the answers. What I want you to do is, I want you to look at the words in the middle column. Verb plus gardd. Okay, G. Is there a G in our list? Well, let's look at the purple column, yr un porffor. Patyca, bydyga. Yes, there is a G in our list. So we know that the word gardd is going to need a mutation. Why does gardd need a mutation? Because it follows the word ver, my. Okay, so gardd is in the list, and when we look at what a G changes to, it changes to NG. Then what we would write down in the final column is fy ngardd, okay, NGARDD. So we just swap out the G and write NG instead. Look at the second one then, jumper in Welsh, siwmper. So my causes a mutation, so we now need to look at, in the list, is there an S? Right, there's no S in this list, which means that we don't need a mutation. So fy siwmper is fine, okay? And then you can do that for the rest of them. So first thing I would suggest you doing is looking at the start of the Welsh letter, the first letter of the Welsh word. So gardd, siwmper, bochdew, cadair, cathod, ysgol, trwyn, and decide, maybe highlight if you're making notes or circle, which ones require the mutation and what letters they change to. And then you can have a go at writing down what the answer is. Okay, so what I'm going to ask you to do now, please, is stopiwch y video. Okay, stop the video on this slide. Try and work out your answers, and then you can press play when you are ready to hear the answers. And then you could all do some self-reflection and mark your work. Okay, off you go. Bant â chi. Iawn te. Felly, ar y sgrin nawr, mae'r atebion. Okay, so fy ngardd is obviously a mutation because we decided the G went to NG. Fy siwmper didn't require the mutation because even though fy does cause a mutation, S isn't in the list. Fy mochdew, my hamster, as we can see in that grid, a B turns to a M. Cadair, fy nghadair, a C changes to NGH in the same way with your Cymru, Caerdydd, yng Nghaerdydd, yng Nghymru, etc. Fy nghathod, there's the same mutation there twice, different words, different contexts, same letters that change, okay? Fy ysgol, ysgol doesn't require a mutation. Why? Because Y is not in the list. And fy nhrwyn, a T is in the list, which goes to a NH, so that's where you get fy nhrwyn from. So what I want you to be mindful of here is if you're using the word fy, which means my, you will need a mutation, a treiglad, trwynol, a nasal mutation if the word that follows starts with patyca or bydyga. Okay? Iawn te. Yn symud ymlaen te. So, y treiglad trwynol ar ôl yn when it is followed by a lle. So, yn has different meanings in Welsh, but in this instance, we are looking at yn meaning is. Okay? In, sorry, not is, in. So if we are going to use the word yn, meaning in, and we are following it by a place, a lle, a place, then we need a treiglad trwynol. So for example, if we want to be able to say, I live in, there is a cinema in, there are good shops in followed by a place, we need a treiglad trwynol. Same letters that change as what we just did with fy, my, and same letters are what they change to. But this time, little bit more complex because sometimes the word for in changes as well, as you can see in the grid there. Okay, so if you're going to change, if you want to say, I don't know, in Porthmadog, then you would say instead of un. If you want to say Cymru, then you're going to say instead of un, but it's there for you. Okay, so I've given you 4 examples, mae 4 enghraifft fan hyn. If you're going to say in Caerdydd, in Cardiff, then you're going to say yng Nghaerdydd. Okay, if you're going to say in Bangor, then you're going to say Mangor. If you're going to say in Trwynol, then you're going to say yn Trwynol. And if you're going to say in Porthmadog, then you're going to say Mhorthmadog, okay? Now, a really easy way for you to remember if you need un or is to look at the first couple of letters. So if you can see with Caerdydd, Nghaerdydd, an NG is the last letter of the and an NG is the first letter of Caerdydd in the new version. Same with Bangor, look. We're changing it to Mangor, and the last letter of the becomes so that's an M, and then Mangor starts with an M as well. So they almost match up. So that's just a little tip for you on how you can check these. Okay, so let's have a look at this then. Let's put it into a real life context. So say, for example, you've written a piece of writing and now you're going to go back and self-reflect on it and look at if you can spot the mutations, okay? Now, there are, like I said earlier, there are more than one mutation in Welsh, but what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the treiglad trwynol, okay? So I want you to look for two things yn y darn, okay? You're going to look for the word fy, and see if there's any mutations after fy. And you're also going to look for the word yn, meaning in, and a place following it. And I want you to see if you can just note down where the mutations are. So a bit of a skimming and scanning skill going on here, okay? Exactly like you would do after you've finished a piece of writing to check that you've got the mutations there in the right place. Okay, so I'll read it for you so you can hear it being read, and then you can note down any mutations that you hear or that you see, and we'll discuss why they're there and if they're correct. Okay, so it says, Shwmai, Johnny a dwi'n mynd i'r gêm rygbi yng Nghaerdydd yfory. Sôn am hwyl. Dwi'n mynd ar y tren ac yn dechrau'r journey yn Nimbych y Pysgod. Wedyn dwi'n stopio Mortywyn i gwrdd ag Aled. Wrth gyrraedd, byddai'n cael bwyd yng nghanol y ddinas achos mae llawer o opsiynau. Ar ôl y gêm, byddai'n mynd adre a chysgu yn hi mam gi. Okay, so I want you to stop the video now. Stopiwch y fideo unwaith eto, once again, and I want you to note down, where can you see, ble ydych chi'n gallu gweld y treiglad trwynol? Okay, ble, where? Can you find un enghraifft I ddechrau, one example to start? Look through it line by line. Look for the letters that we know may change. A lot, with mutations, you'll recognize the word, you just may not recognize the start. So if that's the case, it's probably a mutation that's happened. Okay, so dwi'n mynd i'r gêm rygbi yng Nghaerdydd would be the first one, wouldn't it? Yeah, yng Nghaerdydd, in Cardiff. We look at the grid that we could have copied down from the last slide, or you can go back and rewind and watch the video again. Yng Nghaerdydd yfory. So I'm going to the rugby game in Cardiff tomorrow. Yng Nghaerdydd. Okay, so that's an example of in being followed by a place. Dwi'n mynd ar y tren. I'm going on the train. Ac yn dechrau'r journey yn Nimbych y Pysgod. So I'm going on the train and I'm starting the journey yn Nimbych y Pysgod. Once again, starting the journey in Tenby. So in plus a place, yn Nimbych y Pysgod. So we've required the mutation there. So the original word, Dimbych y Pysgod, but of course we've needed to use a treiglad trwynol. Wedyn, then, dwi'n stopio ym Mhorthywyn. So after I've gone to Tenby, I'm stopping on the train in Mhorthywyn, in Porthywyn, Buryport. Okay, so once again, in plus a place, Buryport is a place, then we need that mutation. I gwrdd ag Aled. Wrth gyrraedd, byddai'n cael bwyd yng nghanol y ddinas. So I will have, after arriving, I'm going to have food yng nghanol y ddinas, in the centre of the city, in the city centre. Now, you may think, hang on a second, Cardiff is a place, Tenby's a place, Buryport's a place, canol y ddinas, the city centre, is a place, it's a location. Okay, so you still need to apply that mutation there. Ar ôl y gêm, byddai'n mynd adre a chysgu yn hi mam gi. Same thing applies here. Okay, so I'll be going home and sleeping in my grandmother's house, yn hi mam gi. Once again, a location, a place. Doesn't have to be a town or a city. Any form of location or place is going to require this mutation. Okay, so I'm just going to run through now so you can double check your answers. Yng Nghaerdydd, yn Nimbych y Pysgod, Mhorthywyn, because we need to remember the because it begins with an M, yng nghanol y ddinas, a yn hi mam gi. Now, what some of you may have realised as you were reading through that piece of reading is that there are actually other mutations involved. There are a couple of examples of a treiglad meddal, of a soft mutation yn y darn, and that is exactly how your writing is going to be. You're going to have a mixture of mutations in your work potentially. Okay, so what I've done there is I've highlighted the treiglad trwynol, so those are obvious for you to see, but then I've also, on this slide, highlighted other mutations for you to be aware that there will not only be one mutation, hopefully, in your work. Okay, now the last thing I've got here is I've got the reading piece again. Now, what would be a really good option for you to do, maybe if you're doing some past papers or you're writing some work in class, then what you could do is after you've written is you could use different colours to highlight the different mutations, or maybe different patterns, or for example, create a grid where you can work out, have you used these mutations? So on the right hand side there, I've got a little grid which says treiglad meddal, which is, there's another video on if you want to look at that in more detail, the soft mutation, when to use that, and then the treiglad trwynol, which is what we focused on today, and that is after ver, meaning my, and un plus a place or a location. Okay, so it may be handy for you to do a little grid and for you to have that little note. There's nothing wrong with you writing that in pencil by the side so that you remember when you need to use these, and the more you become familiar with this, the easier and the more natural it will come to you. Okay, so diolch yn fawr iawn am wylio'r fideo yma heddi. Thank you very much for joining and watching this video today. Hopefully it's helped explain when we use the treiglad trwynol, and hopefully now you'll be able to watch this as many times as you want, and maybe there are some tips in here that will help you become more confident when using the treiglad trwynol. So diolch yn fawr iawn, and hwyl fawr.